So, sloppy Steve Bannon is back in the spotlight. He's in the news again, and he's saying silly things. Now, before I give you the specifics on this, Steve Bannon is not always wrong in terms of political strategy. He's not. In fact, he was one of the voices behind the scenes that was on the side of let Trump be Trump and let him fight back. It was Steve Bannon and Corey Lewandowski who came up with a lot of the really smart, sly strategies. Like, for example, when Trump was caught on tape saying, I grab him by the pussy, I don't even wait. And you had all of corporate media was convinced he was basically going to drop out before the debate that night. There was like a debate either that night or the night after. And they were convinced of it. They're like, he's done. He's going to drop out. It's over. This is crazy. Because in corporate media, that salacious sex stuff is the end-all, be-all. Whereas to people, no. When Bill Clinton got blown in the White House, his approval rating literally went up. It didn't go down. But if you listen to the media, it's like, oh, the world's ending. Ah! Okay, so he's the one who came up with the idea, him and Lewandowski, of, no, let's invite a bunch of Bill Clinton's accusers and let's do a press conference with them right before the debate. So that when you're asked about what you said in the debate, all you have to do is say, listen, I'm not proud of it, but words are just words. I didn't do anything. Actions are actions. Bill Clinton did a lot of terrible stuff. And then what happened? Took the narrative from 100% anti-Trump to he made it a wash. So that actually is political genius and knowing that you always have to counter by going on the offense. So from a strategic standpoint, Steve Bannon is not dumb. We massively disagree with his philosophy, and I think he's a virulent bigot, and I think if he's being honest with you, he'd say that. But as far as strategy goes, he ain't bad. Now, having said that, let's look at what was in the news yesterday. Steve Bannon predicts Harris-Beto ticket has the best shot at beating Trump. Former White House chief strategist Steve Bannon on Friday claimed a Kamala Harris-Beto O'Rourke ticket has the best shot against President Trump in the 2020 elections. But he also contended that the president will likely win re-election. Quote, I think the best they're going to have, and I don't think these people will defeat him. I think a combination of Kamala Harris for president and Beto O'Rourke for VP is a way to mobilize their base and give it the best shot, Bannon said during an interview on CNBC's Squawk Box. Okay, where do I begin with this? First of all, no, that is not a mobilization of the Democratic base. The Democratic base is the Bernie people. That's the Democratic base. That's the left-wing home. That's like the default, like, here's the actual people who ain't going anywhere, who are the real lefties. So, for you to say Beto O'Rourke and Kamala Harris, two milquetoast centrists, represent the base. No, they don't represent the base of anything. They represent centrist corporatism, which is why in the polls right this second, they're floundering. Which leads to my conspiracy theory point, and I admit I'm making this up, but I think it might be true. I think he might be playing a game here. And the Citations Needed podcast pointed this out, and it was a brilliant thing. Everybody can go check it out if you haven't yet. It's called The Inexplicable Republican Best Friend, where you see it all the time from Joe Scarborough, but now you're seeing it from Steve Bannon, among others. And what they do is, it's like they pretend to give good faith advice to Democrats. But it's like, dude, you're a Republican. Like, why should we think you're giving us sound advice on how to defeat you? It sounds like he's giving us shitty advice to do the second part of what he predicted, which is Trump will likely win if it's against Kamala or Beto, or a combination of the two. That's what it sounds like. The inexplicable Republican best friend is always like, listen. In this segment, I'm going to tell you how I'm looking out for you, and the way I'm looking out for you is like this. You need to pick two really shitty people to run against us. And by the way, you should agree more with us. That should be your philosophy, is like Democrats should be more like Republicans. That's my idea, bro. Well, you have a little thing I like to call a conflict of interest now, don't you? I mean, if I start giving advice to Ted Cruz as to how to be better, everybody would laugh me out of the room because they'd be like, you're on the other side. He is a dyed-in-the-wool far right-wing person. You're not like that at all. Why would we take your advice seriously for him? By the same token, Bannon trying to help Democrats in a presidential race, it sounds like he's purposely giving the worst advice possible, which is Kamala or Beto, which is fundamentally would manifest as an anti-populist campaign, which would then help Trump, because all he'd have to do is go back to his old tricks of fake populism. So it might literally be the case that Steve Bannon is giving bad advice on purpose. Now, there is one other person who surprisingly got it right. We haven't brought this up yet, but this was maybe a month ago or so. There was an article about how Ann Coulter said, if it's Bernie versus Trump, Bernie's going to destroy Trump. And if I'm not mistaken, her logic was very similar to stuff I've said in the past, which is Bernie Sanders takes away everything about Donald Trump that got him over the edge. So in other words, the perception that Donald Trump was anti-corruption and anti-establishment and pro-worker. Now, he's not those things, let's be clear. But when he went to Michigan and Ohio, and he was all throughout the Rust Belt, hammering away on TPP, hammering away on NAFTA, saying Hillary's the candidate that outsourced your jobs, Bill outsourced your jobs, we got to fight back against this, I'm going to keep your job here. He had the perception of being anti-establishment, anti-corruption, and pro-worker, pro-populist. And what would Bernie do? Takes away all of those perceived advantages of Trump. Because now you have a real dude who's anti-corruption, a real dude who's pro-worker, a real dude who's populist. And you also don't have the downside. This is not what Coulter says, this is what I'm saying. You also don't have the downside of the rank bigotry. Now, a lot of people who voted for Trump supported him because of the bigotry. That's true. Those people exist. But then there's also a lot of people who overlooked his bigotry and voted for him. And I think that in the case of the Rust Belt in particular, a lot of those old factory towns that were destroyed by outsourcing, they were like, I'll overlook the shittiness about his character and I'll overlook the bigotry, but because he says he's going to get our jobs back. So I'll go for him for that reason. So when you got a guy like Bernie who people trust more to bring the jobs back, Donald Trump's perceived advantage is gone. And it doesn't matter how many times he tries to say that Bernie Sanders is crazy Bernie, and it doesn't matter how many times they try to fearmonger about the Green New Deal. Oh, they want to ban cows because they fart. They want to ban airplanes. Oh, that's not true, and you're making it so easy to counter-argue against you because you're only talking in your little Fox News bubble. You're not appealing to the American people. So I'm telling you, I think she's right. Bernie versus Trump in a general. That's the thing. It's not the hard part, in my opinion, for Bernie is not the general. Once he gets to the general, I think it's pretty easy. The hard part for Bernie is the primary. Got a lot of candidates, going to have a lot of misdirection by the media, a lot of shitty coverage in the media, and he's got to really go to the grassroots and run the right kind of campaign in order to win. So the hard part for Bernie is the primary, the easy part is the general, and I think Steve Bannon might know that, and he might be giving bad advice on purpose, because who the hell on planet Earth can objectively look at Beto and Kamala, who are floundering in the polls, and go, yeah, they're Trump's biggest threat.